Hello, this is Sherry Kalergis live from Vancouver with At 45, the magazine for women over 45 who are rediscovering who they are and exploring what they want next in life. And don't we want more? More of everything, love, fun, laughter, and fulfillment. And we deserve it. Quarantine Conversations is an effort by the magazine to support you and even ourselves in getting through these difficult times. The agenda is simple. We're going to dive into our conversation with our guest and then open up the lines the last 20 minutes for people who can tell us where you're from, what you're doing during these difficult times, and also ask questions. I think that one of the most amazing things during this time is that we as women can come together and support each other and find encouragement and inspiration. And I know that these conversations have truly done that for me. Just one housekeeping item. If you, sessions are being taped and put up on our YouTube channel. So if you do not want your persona in the public domain, please use an avatar or keep your video off. So today we're so excited to welcome Lauren Carr. Lauren is an international best-selling author with over 20 titles, which is just awesome. She is also the owner of Acorn Book Services and I Read Book Tours. She lives with her husband and two spoiled German shepherds on a mountain in Harper Ferry, West Virginia. Welcome.
Well, hello. Oh, and here comes, okay, my dog was nice and quiet until you talked about that. And then he heard that he was spoiled and he came in to say hello. Hello, Sherry and everyone, and I am thrilled to be here. This is my getting out. I've been holed up during the whole quarantine. So it's nice to actually get to talk to people.
It absolutely is. And I love your backdrop. You were telling me earlier that your husband has just got into Zoom sessions and that.
Yes, he has been. This is what he always has to have a project. And since we're not actually locked down, we're in West Virginia, but we're in quarantine. I have asthma and respiratory. I'm prone to pneumonia and bronchitis. So I have not seen my son since this whole thing started, because he was one of those people who went off for spring break, and then I guess he grew some sense. And so he has been in Morgantown. So I have not seen him during this whole thing because he's afraid he might give me something. But my husband is my business manager and the business manager at our church. And so they are getting together through Zoom. And he knew this was coming up, and he decided to put in basically his library. He's constructed like a little TV studio here. We have lights, we have cameras, we have action, and yes, this is a virtual, so if suddenly it falls down and you see a blank wall, that's what's really behind me. But so this is not really my kitchen. So my kitchen is not that fancy. Well, I have a fancy kitchen, but it's not that fancy. So that is, so now you can invite me to more Zoom things to talk to people. And you can, and I might bring the ostrich. I have one that's an ostrich. I might bring the ostrich next time.
Oh, well, that is a beautiful setting. And technology, I mean, during this time, that's one thing that I've found is women, well, everybody is embracing technology and doing business and using technology tools that they never explored before. Now we have time to explore them.
We have time to explore all kinds of things. Yeah. I'm actually, like you mentioned, I am the owner of Acorn Book Services and I Read Book Tours. who does virtual book tours. And I have been getting contacted by authors during this time that they're like, okay, well, let's take a look at virtual book tours, you know, and they like don't even know the first thing about it. So I'm teaching people about virtual book tours. You know, they're exploring that as an avenue to promote their books, you know, to do a
Well,
case.
let's start there. I mean, I was I'd never heard of them before, and I'm fascinated by them. Tell us about them.
Well, they started, I did my first book tour, virtual book tour with like my fourth book. And, you know, and I have like 29, 28, I've lost count of how many books, but like about in the upper 20s, almost 30 books that I've written. And every book I do a book tour, a virtual book tour. What happens with the in-person book tours is that whenever you finish your book event at a bookstore, you know, and a lot of brick and mortar bookstores have gone out of business. When they finish and you pack up your books and you leave, it's just a memory. Whereas a virtual book tour is online. Think of it as so many celebrities and people, you know, they get bitten in the butt 10 years after, because a tweet comes up that they wrote 10 years ago while they were drunk. You know, that comes back and it bites them in the butt. Virtual book tours is sort of the opposite of that, is that 10 years later, that great review that you did that's on a blog is going to come back and, you know, possibly mean more sales. And because it's there, because once it's on the internet, it's there forever. So while it's on there, then you can still continue to sell books. I am still promoting great reviews that I've gotten on blogs like 6, 7 years after I've gotten the review, because it's still there. It's still there, and people are still discovering it. So that a virtual book tour, what it is I'm a tour coordinator, and I get together. I have all these bloggers in my database. So, you know, I get together the bloggers for virtual book tour stops. So every day you're on a different blog, and these bloggers are reading your book, or they may do a book spotlight. And I'll explain what that is, because, you know, a lot of people don't know what that is. So basically you're selling your book every day across the internet at different blogs, and they're book blogs. So it's, you know, so you're not selling your book at a bathing suit company, unless your book is about bathing suits. But, you know, that's where you're selling your book, is on these blogs where people who would like your book would be discovering it. And the bloggers are talking about your book. And these stops, they last forever. That's the thing, is that when you do a brick and mortar book tour where you're going to bookshops and coffee shops all over, you're packing up your books. You're probably spending all day packing up your books, going there, trying to sell your books. And then once it's over, you're packing it up and you're gone. Whereas a virtual book tour, when you have a book tour stop, then you can do it naked, or, you know, do it without pants. You can sit there, drink your coffee, read your great review. Now they're honest reviews. So, you know, that's the thing, is that, you know, that's what makes it honorable, is they're honest reviews. So they're not going to, you know, they're not going to say wonderful things about your book if they don't like it. I also get asked, what happens if a blogger doesn't like your book? Then generally what they do is they will then post what's called a book spotlight. And a book spotlight is basically an advertisement for your book. It is, you know, it has the synopsis and the book cover and your author bio and all the buy links. And what you can do with a book spotlight is you can do a guest post or an author interview. Some authors, they're afraid to have people read their books and review them. I've actually run into authors. I ran into an author once. He said, I don't let people review my book. I don't let strangers review my book. And I'm like, well, if it's for sale on Amazon, strangers are going to be reading your book. That's the whole point. So, but I've run into, so some authors, if they're afraid of doing book review tours, which, means that there's something they need to explore as far as being an author, then they can do what's called spotlights, and then they write guest posts and author interviews. So basically they're and sometimes that can be very effective because you're, especially if it's a nonfiction book, you're exploring the topic of what your book is about. You can draw people in to buy the book, so that's what a book spotlight is. And we also offer those.
That is fascinating. Now, because it's unusual, people might not really think that it's taken off. But you were sharing earlier with me that you're receiving residuals from previous book tours, and that it really does work.
Yeah, it really does. I think that was actually when I've broken through as an author, was whenever I started doing virtual book tours, because a lot of bloggers did like me and they were talking about me and they signed up for my tours all the time. Anytime I have a book come out, I have these, these stable of, I hate to call them stable, but a bunch of book bloggers who they will feature me. Yeah, they're one is here on our tour, on our program right now. So you start, you get people, especially because they're book bloggers, because they love books, and the people are coming into their book tour, their book blogs, because they share the same love for the same type of books. That's another thing. If you're thinking of doing a virtual book tour, what you need to do is find a book tour company or coordinator who their bloggers would be the type who like your books. What I'm saying is that, for example, because I did quite a few book tour companies before I found iReads, and I bought iReads from Laura Fabini last July. I was like her best client, and I wasn't going to let her sell the company to somebody else and then have to break somebody in. This is how I like my tours. So, well, I'll do it myself. That was sort of my attitude. I'll do it myself then. But like the first book tour company that I went on, and a virtual book tour company, they could say, oh, well, we take all kinds of books, but you have to think of, it's a marketing thing. Where is your target audience? Who is your target audience? And do they go to those blogs? See, when any blog, anyone who's on here who's a blogger, you know that you're reviewing the type of books that you like. And your followers are going to like the books that you read. So, if you're doing reviews for a lot of porn books, then somebody who is not into porn isn't going to be following your blogs. So you have to take a book tour company that their bloggers have the followers who's your target audience. So an example is that I basically write clean books. My books are pretty clean. I don't have explicit sex scenes. I don't have graphic violence, even though I write murder mysteries. I don't, you don't have brain membrane dropping from the places. I don't talk about body fluids. I don't do that type of stuff. And the first book tour company that I went with, she placed my book with a lot of bloggers who you had to be 18 to enter. And so then whenever you enter the website, you'd enter the website, there'd be all these naked people there. And she had a lot of erotica books. Yeah, now this is the blogs that were reviewing my books. And yes, the bloggers, they liked my books, but I was saying, but the people who frequent those blogs, they're looking for naked people, and I don't have naked people in my book. So whenever they buy my book, they're going to be very disappointed because there's no sex, there's no nudity, there's none of that stuff that they obviously like. Otherwise, why are they going to those blogs? So I never went with that company again. They were saying, well, maybe some of those people will like your books. I was like, I don't think so. If they're going to be, going to that blog, they're not going to be interested in my book. I have cute little dogs. That's what I have in my books, So I learned rather quickly, and that was something that I learned. And sometimes it's life is an experience, and you learn things along the way, and then you use what you learn along the way. is what, and that was something that I learned. That's what I advise people whenever they, because there have been books that we've turned down with our company, because I'm like, it's not because I don't like your books. My bloggers won't like your books. If my bloggers don't like your books, then their followers aren't going to like your books.
Right.
Yeah. So you have to find somebody who is into what your target audience is into. So you have to do a little bit of search around for virtual book tour companies.
That is fascinating. Well, I know with the magazine, there are a lot of women who get to being 45 or over who then take up writing, and there's a number of successful authors in that age bracket, including yourself. So I think that many will find that whole idea of a virtual book tour really interesting. I think it's an amazing initiative.
Well, but think how many brick and mortar bookstores have gone out of business. So many people are buying their books off of Amazon. That is where a lot of people go for books, is online. Amazon, the book blogs, you look at on Facebook. We're getting more and more bloggers who are bookstagrammers, who are on Instagram. So that should be a place where, that's a natural place to go to sell books, is on the internet. And that's basically what the virtual book tour makes use of, is they're using the internet to get, and this is something that, like, whenever you go to a brick and mortar book event, or you get maybe like 20 people show up, whereas if you're on a virtual book tour, you have one stop after another. And a lot of the bloggers, they don't just post you that review or that spotlight on their blog. They may put it on BookBub. They may put it on Instagram. They may put it on Facebook. Like what our company has is, we have an incentive program for the bloggers to send us the links to all these places that they're posting things. So somebody could just book a 10-stop tour with me, but it's conceivable that the reviews could end up in 50 places.
Amazing.
Yeah,
that's really using.
Whereas if you're at an in-person book event, that speech is right there, told once to maybe like 5, 10, 15 people. Whereas, so a book review is actually spread out several places if it's on the internet. So it's a way to reach more people.
There's definitely power in that. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about your book. I think you have a new book coming out.
Yes, I have, and I have the one that's coming out in a couple of weeks, and I'm going to share my screen so that I can show you the cover. This is, and I hope you could all see it, this is Killer Deadline. That is what is coming out. And I don't know if the technology is that there. Killer Deadline, that is my first cozy murder mystery. And that is a Nikki Bryant. And she just totally came to me. Yes, and the dog's name is Elmo. I based him on a boxer dog that I had as a child. This is, and Marilyn is really excited about this because this is my very first female protagonist. I've written several series. I'm on 4, so this is my 5th series. And that is, this is a Nikki Bryant, and this is really naturally a cozy mystery. This is a real cozy mystery. So the erotica fans aren't going to want this book. But Nikki Bryant, she is an investigative journalist who, she is in her mid-30s, and she comes home to her small town in Pennsylvania when her mother is retiring from running the family's television station. It's a local television station in Pine Grove, Pennsylvania. That's a small town. And she brings home her dog, Elmo. And basically, she's coming home on a dare. She's supposed to run the television station, but an online buddy of hers on social media convinces her that they make a pact that, you know, if she goes home to face the man she left behind, then her online buddy is going to find the woman who got away. And so they have this there. But whenever she comes home, one of the things she has to face is her father's cold case murder. Her father was murdered when she was a young girl. And so she works to solve the cold case murder. Because like she hasn't even unpacked her bags, and she's running the television station, and the on-air anchor of the 6 o'clock news gets murdered. And so she's investigating that murder, and possibly this person had information that could lead to solving her father's murder. So it's a cold case murder is what it is. And she's my first female protagonist. She just came to me. That's one of the ways that I write, is that characters come to me. I don't know if it means I'm psychotic, but they come. And I was in the middle of writing my next Mac Faraday, and suddenly this whole story just dropped in my lap. And that was, you know, including the dog. Elmo came to life too. So that's the first in a new series that I'm doing. And it's an actual cozy. I have been told by reviewers that my books are kind of gritty cozies, in that they're actually police procedurals. That's what I generally write, and it has humor in it. This one is just a female protagonist, an amateur protagonist. Everybody's usually in business that I usually write.
Well, so you have a gift to have something like that just fall down to you is a gift. I'm telling you.
Oh, thank you.
But I love the artwork on that cover. It really draws you in and is timely and current. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the things is interesting is that is a pre-made cover. Because usually my covers are usually custom made. But you know, I went hunting for a cover design because I wanted something that was totally different than what I usually did, and I wanted something that the potential readers would know that it was a cozy. And so I was hunting online, and actually I had found another cover that I kind of liked at a pre-made cover website. What you do is you Google pre-made cozy mystery covers, and I found one that I kind of liked, and I was showing my husband, like, you know, well, this is kind of what I'm thinking. And he, on the same page, he pointed at that one, and he said, I kind of like that one. So I have to give credit to my hubby on that. And I looked at it and I thought, yeah, that, you know, but it didn't have the dog. And I said, I want the dog on the cover, you know, because, you know, that screams cozies. That's what a friend of mine that I was talking to the other day, and she writes cozy mysteries. And she said, you know, it's all about the animal. In cozy mysteries, it's all about the animal. And I said, yeah, that's why I put the dog on the cover. And that's what I contacted the artist who did that cover. And I said, can you put a dog on it? You know, a boxer. I want a boxer. And have him chasing but the butterflies, because that's what Elmo would do. And she slapped that on there, and everything else came all together. So, you know, for authors who are looking to maybe save some money, now there's a lot of lousy pre-made covers out there, but there's also some really good ones. If you really hunt, you can maybe find a nice pre-made one for, you know, a very reasonable price.
I've never heard of that before. That's a really good tip for people who are looking for artwork.
Yeah. And for people who are graphic designers, you want to make some extra money, you know, set up that's what this, the lady, and I'm sorry, her name is escaping me. Maybe I can put it in the comments whenever I think of it. But she is a custom designer, but she brings in extra money. She makes these pre-made covers and has them on the website. And all you have to do is put in the, the author's name and the title name, and, and then just to do a little bit, it's very limited. She said you have like a couple of changes, that goes with the price, but that's how you can bring in some money, if you're to get started. Like her, in the case of this graphic designer really made out, because I generally will not put, if you look at all my other covers, I do not have a character on the cover, but that character on that front cover screamed Nikki Bryant. I mean, that was who I had pictured. But now I'm married to her, which means I'm married to that graphic designer, because she said she has Nikki Bryant. She's got Nikki Bryant, so I'm married to that cover designer. So every Nikki Bryant book that I do, I have to have this graphic design. So I'm probably going to be paying a lot more than I paid for that little pre-made, because now I'm married to her, because I put that cover on there, because I use that character. I can't use a redhead next time. I got to use that same character, So I got married again.
So tell us about your most recent book, Lauren.
So that is the Nikki Bryant mystery. I also have the Nutcracker Conspiracy that's coming out. It's already out. It came out in, I'm trying to think. It came out in February. And that is the fourth Thorny Rose mystery. And that deals with conspiracy theories. That's the Nutcracker Conspiracy. And it is about, it's about the, I was supposed to do that in my elbow. Sorry about that. But it is about Jessica Faraday and Murphy Thornton. And they are investigating an assassination attempt on the president from like about 3 years earlier. The president was attending the Nutcracker ballet, which his daughter was in. It's a totally fictional president. So he's attending the Nutcracker ballet. There's an attempted presidential assassination, and the vice president's wife is shot. And then, of course, they kill the shooter, who they assume to be the shooter. Well, then 3 years later, you know how things are, in journalism and the media and the way the world is, this whole Nutcracker conspiracy blows up, that everyone is saying that it was an attempted presidential coup and that the president's cabinet was behind it. And they realized that, and Murphy is at a wedding reception, and a budding author is at his table, and he is telling him that 12 people, he points out that 12 people connected to the Nutcracker conspiracy have died since that night. And then like a few days later, Dean, the author sitting next to him, he texts Murphy and he says 13 right before he's killed. So Murphy is investigating the Nutcracker conspiracy to find out what is behind. So what actually went down did not actually go down. So it's called the Nutcracker Conspiracy because that was the ballet that the president was attending.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to have to get that book. That sounds fascinating.
And even though it's the fourth in a series, each one of my books are written as a standalone. So you're not lost, so there's no backstage drama going on. I write every book as a standalone. So, but it was a lot of fun. And right now it is in production, or rather I'm waiting for the release in audiobook. So I have an audiobook tour coming up starting in May. And May 4th is the start of the, is the start of the audiobook tour is what I'll be doing there.
Well, we'd love to share that out in the magazine. So please send us information about that.
Okay.
Now, with these like over 20 books, tell us, how did you get started with writing? How did you get into this?
Well, I believe that writers are born, that you don't become a writer. You know, like you can tell the difference. You know, like if you ask me how my day went, I'm not going to just say okay. I'm going to set the mood. I'm going to set, you know, the atmosphere. You know, I'm going to tell you what I was thinking, what I was feeling. You know, the whole thing. And that's just, I mean, I was born like that, you know. You couldn't just ask me, how's your day? You know, you know, you get a whole story. You know, and only maybe about half of it's going to be true. I'll admit to that. I'll make up things. I'll throw in some elves, and the dog said this and the cat said that, you know, that type of thing. That's how writers are. But I've always been interested in murder mysteries, because my mother actually used to read Perry Mason to me at bedtime. She was not into Dick and Jane. My mother was, and my mother passed away a few years ago, and she was my beta reader, who I always passed my books through. And she read every murder mystery that came down the pipe. She read them all. The library would have to import murder mysteries from other libraries around the state for her, because she read it, she just devoured them. And that's always been a love that she and I shared. But I always liked the humor. As a matter of fact, my first professional writing jobs was writing humor. So as a matter of fact, when my very first professional writing job was when I was in high school, and my senior year, and I had this friend, Debbie, who she was in the creative writing class. But because I was going to go to college, I was doing, you know, advanced composition, where we had to learn research. Debbie was in, you know, just something to get you to graduate from high school, you know, was in the creative writing class. So they had to write a short story, and she could not write a short story. She just couldn't. And she was one of these people who never wanted anybody to pay any attention to her. Don't notice her. You know, she wanted to be invisible. Well, the day that she was supposed to turn in her short story, she did not have a short story. And so I wrote it during lunch, you know, and, you know, like she had to read, you know, her class was at 1 o'clock. I started at 11. I wrote a whole short story just sitting, and I got paid a cheeseburger, French fries, and a Diet Coke. That was my payment. So it was a professional writing job. And that was the only A she ever got in high school, was that short story. The thing was, she had to read it in front of the class, and she was mortified because people were laughing. It was a story about a dog who had fleas, and, you know, what he went through with his fleas, because he was really attracted to the poodle across the street. I still remember that. And, you know, and he was very embarrassed by his fleas, and he wanted a bath, but he didn't want a bath, but, you know, he was attracted to this poodle, this whole little, that was the conflict. It was the fleas, but he was attracted, and we had the romance. She was mortified, never spoke to me again. But she got an A. So, you know, and, but, you know, my first book was actually published in whenever I was 40, was when my first book actually was published. And that was in 2010. That was A Small Case of Murder. You know, that was my first book that actually got published. And that was named Independent Publishers Book Awards finalist in the mystery category, was that one. You know, and I've learned a little bit along the ways. That happened when I became a stay-at-home mom. I decided to hang up my writing and be a stay-at-home mom, and that lasted about 6 months. And then I started writing A Small Case of Murder. That was, yeah, you know, because I couldn't stop writing. Because writers, that's who you are, is you have to write. If you're not writing, if you're not actually at the typewriter or the laptop, you're writing in the shower, you're making up stories. You know, I'm just always making up stories. And that's why things like Nikki Bryant landed in my lap. Just sat in my lap one day and said, you're going to write my story. You know, that's how it happens whenever you're a writer.
That is amazing.
Well, thank you.
Well, I've never had that happen to me. And what I see in the conversation and listening to you talk is that those people that you are writing about are you have a close relationship with them.
Yeah, well, I admit that I was one of those kids who had an imaginary friend when I was little. His name was Sam, and my mother said that Sam and I, he was imaginary. We were playing from the time I could talk until I started kindergarten and made real friends who were real, and I actually, because my books are character driven. Your plot, whenever you write a book, your book can be either, character driven or, driven by, by the plot, by circumstances, by nature. And, if it's character driven, it's based on what your characters are going to do. And I tell people that your character, your character is fully developed when they tell you this is what we're going to do. You can't force your character to turn left when they're inclined to turn right. I know what my characters will put in their coffee. I know what they're going to order for lunch. I can't make them eat something that they're not going to eat. That's how, and that's what makes for the twists and the turns, because I don't direct the twists and turns. What some people say is, well, do you write by the seat of your pants, in that you just start writing and your characters tell you what you're going to do, or do you outline it? And what I do is I know how it's going to end, but my characters are going to take me in different directions. So, what happens in the middle of the book, between the beginning and the end, I generally don't have any control over.
Isn't that something?
Mm-hmm.
You're the first writer that I've talked to that has explained it that way. So I find that really fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
We're coming to the end of our time, but one thing I just wondered, because you are an author, is there one book that you've read through your life that held particular meaning for you, or was important, or is important to you?
Oh, the one. I would have to say that, I would have to say Agatha Christie, and Then There Were None, because I think that was the book that I read that made me say, I want to do this. Even though, because, I that was like the first book that I read that I was actually in awe of, and I thought, and whenever I read that, and then there was, because just how everything happened, and then at the end, and I won't give the most, I'm sure everybody knows how the book ends, but, I thought, this is so clever, that the author is so clever, because, and I was a teenager when I read that. So, I think I was maybe 13. And like I said, my mother loved murder mysteries, and it was always the puzzle. It wasn't the gruesomeness. It wasn't it was always the puzzle of the murder mysteries. That's what but when I read that, and then there was none, I thought, I could never be that clever. That was my reaction. I wish I could be that clever, but I did not think I could ever be that clever. And then now to actually be doing that, so I'm actually doing now what I always dreamed of doing, and it took me a long time to get that way, because, it wasn't until I was 40 that I wrote my first murder mystery. And that was when I actually sat down. My husband was bringing home murder mysteries for me to read, because he was traveling a lot when my son was born. And he would, and reading a bad book can help you as a writer, because then you can think, and I've even heard Stephen King say that it does you good if you want to be a writer to read bad books, because you could say, I could do better than this, and then that will propel you to write. And that's actually is what happened. Was my husband was bringing home some bad murder mysteries, because I hate knowing who the killer is by page 20. I really hate that. And I actually said one day, I could do better than this. And that's what made me sit down to write A Small Case of Murder. That was what made me do that. So, but I would have to, Agatha Christie was the one who I've always aspired to be able to do that.
Well, you're a true inspiration, Lauren, because I mean, lots of women get to this part or stage of our life and we think that we can't be something different. But I think you're a true inspiration that you can do anything you want at any time of your life.
Well, I just turned 60, I'll tell you that. And for the last 10 years, I've been saying life begins at 50 because
Go girl.
because I am not anything like I was whenever I was 40. I'm not anything. And I'll tell you, I was a jackass when I was 30. So, I'm really at a better place now than I was. It was I was 50 when the first Mac Faraday book came out. That came out I was 51 when the first Mac Faraday book came out. And that was the book that actually really broke me through as far as sales. But I'm happier now. I'm more at peace now with who I am, and that is where, if you're 40 and you're not doing what you want to do, hey, you still have another 30 years to go, maybe even another 40. My mother was in her 40s when she passed away. I mean, not 40s. My mother was in her 80s. So, life is, it's never too late. It is really, literally never too late. I am happier. I'm content with myself. I'm doing what I really wanted to do. I only bought iReads last year and I'm thrilled and happy with that. My husband likes to say I'm an international businesswoman because I'm dealing with bloggers in India and the UK and Canada. So, I really do think that life begins at 50. So you still have another 10 years if you're at 40. If you're 45, you still have another 5 years, and then you'll be happy. So.
Absolutely. Well, let's open the line up for questions and sharing. And I know Marilyn's on here, which is, she's worked with you before. So Marilyn, why don't you start?
I'm so excited to be here. I actually met Lauren through iRead Book Tours before she bought it. So my first book, I was looking for really innovative marketing ideas and reviews, and I was told to check out iRead Book Tours, and it was a hideous success. I ended up with 25 reviews on Amazon. On the other side of that, I paid a lot of money to have a poster up in a book fair, and 300 books were shipped out to brick and mortar stores, and 270 were returned 2 months later at my loss. So from these two experiences, I've really focused on online sales anyways. I think digital sales, the sales you get are good sales. They stay, they don't bounce back at you. So I was able to, I'm a huge reader. I consume books, and I love in the evening to have something lighter to read. So I ended up reviewing one of her later books, surprisingly, and was such a fan, I went and bought all the previous books in digital editions and took them to Hawaii and read them all in 2 weeks to bring myself up to date on all her series. And since then, I've always reviewed her books, but my problem is she sends me a book, I sit down in the afternoon and I'm done by bedtime. So, but I just, it's such an innovative way to reach out to new readers, these book tours. How do you get outside your circle? I constantly get asked, my friends aren't doing reviews for me. My family's not doing reviews for me. Your friends and family are not your clients. And if they're your only clients as an author, you will never be successful. So I have found the blog tours a really great way to reach outside my normal circle, to have it's seen by readership on other blog sites, people that I don't have access to. So every book, my second book I did, in fact, I think I did a spotlight tour on my first book again right before I released my second book, and then I did a blog tour with my second book. I didn't even do a live launch this time on my second book. So it's just a very innovative way to reach out to new and start to build new readership beyond what you normally reach. And as far as Lauren's book, she knows I'm a big fan. So
Thank you.
I'm always, she lets me know when the new books are coming out, and I start salivating, and she sends it to me, and I finish the book I have just to hold it off a little bit. Then I sit down and consume it. I have got to learn to stretch it out, maybe read 2 chapters a night, because it's there and gone too fast. But I have from day one, I've never said anything to Lauren, but she has all male protagonists. And so the women in her books are always strong, intelligent, like they're women I respect. I respect that view of women, but I've been waiting a long time to see if she'd finally come around and offer me a smart, bright, intelligent woman who is the lead character instead of the supporting character. So this new series was really exciting for me.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't create Nikki Bryant with that in mind of, oh, I'm going to find a female protagonist. It wasn't, it was just, she came to me and I thought, oh, this is going to be a female protagonist.
Oh, well, she was just for Marilyn. And I have to say, Marilyn, I'm exactly the same kind of reader. I get into a book, I cannot. If it takes 2 days, my family has to go without food. So
now, that happens here whenever I'm writing. I'm in the middle of a climax. I've had writer friends say to me, you know, it's okay to let your characters bleed out, and make dinner. And I'm like, no, I can't let them bleed out. I have to get them to the hospital.
Now, Chloe said that she was writing a book or wanted to write a book, and she had some questions. Chloe, I'm gonna I think you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, Laura.
Hi.
My first career was in magazine. So I was a magazine editor for 6 international publications. I'm not familiar with books, so this will be my first book. So I'm planning to write a novel about my family history because my family history is Hong Kong history. Mm-hmm. So this is the first time that I've ever heard of a virtual book tour. So it seems to me that, you're showcasing your book to a bunch of bloggers. Is that what it is all about?
Yes, it is. You're showcasing your book, or rather, it's the bloggers who are showcasing your book to their followers, to their readers, to the people who follow their blogs, who visit their blogs. But we're getting, because Instagram is growing so much as a place for people, on social media. And that's where your book, your virtual book tour's success is I find that the authors who have more of a social media presence actually have more success with a virtual book tour because when you do a virtual book tour, the author, you don't just don't just give your books to the bloggers and they do their book reviews and then you sit back and wait for the sales. No, you don't do that. You have more success if you have your own social media following and then you're sharing those reviews and sharing those spotlights with your followers on social media. So authors who have a Facebook account, who have a Twitter account, who have an Instagram account, who have Pinterest, who are on BookBub and these other book websites, you're sharing those stops. And that's why bloggers love virtual book tours, is because the author is sharing the reviews that the bloggers have written with their followers on social media. And so that brings your followers into the bloggers' blog sites. So it's a share. It's a good win-win type of situation, because the authors follow social media followers, and they are following the bloggers to read the great reviews that they got, and the bloggers are giving exposure to the author. So it's a relationship that's a win-win for both of them, because and that's why a lot of the bloggers are signing up for virtual book tours. One, they get free books, but the author is promoting the stops that are on their blogs. So that's why it's a win-win situation. And and you're actually you're exposing your book to readers, because they're book blogs. That's who's going to these book blog sites.
Did you self-publish your book? You don't have an agent, don't you?
No, I don't. I did have an agent when I first started out, and that was when I was writing screenplays back when I was in my 30s. And then I stopped to be a stay-at-home mom, and my son was 6 months old whenever I started writing my first book. And the agent I had did not represent novels. He only did screenplays. And I decided I did self-publish actually all my books. I'm my own publisher. I was traditionally published with my second book after I won the book award. Was shortlisted for the book award for my first book. So I was traditionally published with my second book, and that was A Reunion to Die For. Well, that publisher, the month that it came out as a $26 hardback, A Reunion to Die For, they did away with the paperback edition. And I learned real fast that it is very hard to sell a $26 hardback when you're an unknown.
Yeah.
And so what I did was and actually Amazon contacted me. Oh, we're going to start doing these ebooks, Kindle. Would you like to publish your book in a Kindle? And I was like, okay, I could do that. And so I made both of my books, at that point I had 2 books available in Kindle. And they started doing decent. I was actually making some royalties there. I was actually selling more of them than I was selling the physical books. So then when I did It's Murder, My Son, and that was the first Mac Faraday book, I knew that I couldn't go with the publisher even though the publisher for Reunion to Die For was willing to take me for It's Murder, My Son, I was like, it has to be out in paperback. I cannot sell a $26 hardback. That's just too hard. It has to be in paperback. And the publisher did not have a paperback division. So after about a year of trying to find a new publisher, I had this moment that I thought, you know what? I was an editor in Washington, D.C. with the federal government. I know layout design. And so I was like, I could do this myself. I actually had this moment, I was like, so I don't live in New York, but I could do this myself. I live on a mountaintop in West Virginia, but, I know, I have the, sort of like the $6 million man, I have the technology. I could do this. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to, and I had a year of writer's block after my father-in-law had passed away. So, and that was when I came out of the writer's block. I was like, I'm going to do this myself. And then the next month I was contacted by 3 traditional publishers saying, we'll publish It's Murder, My Son for you. And I had already decided I was going to self-publish it through Amazon with CreateSpace. And, and I thought, so I looked at, the contract, and I actually sat on the contract for about 6 weeks. And then I really looked at the contract, and they said, they wanted the ebook rights. And that was the deal breaker, because I was making money from the ebook sales from my other 2 books. And I knew how to do the ebook by myself, publish it myself. So that was the deal breaker. I said no to those contracts. And then what happened? And then the first month I made $127 in ebooks alone from It's Murder, My Son. You know, whereas if I had signed that contract, I only would have gotten 20% of that. You know, if I, you know, so that, and I did all the layout and everything myself. So that was why I never looked back from that. In 1 month, I made $127 from the ebook sales of It's Murder, My Son. And if I had traditionally published that, then I probably would have gotten about $22 was probably what I would have gotten instead of that. So that's why I self-publish. You know, and actually what I say is I independently publish, and I even have my own, you know, I offer the publishing services to independent authors where they get to keep the rights, they make their royalties, they get to keep it all.
Publishing is a very interesting business. Who knew all the complexities to it? Chloe, did you have any other questions before we sign off, or just about out of time?
So I'm just wondering, because I've never done that before. So is it a good strategy to approach Amazon, company like Amazon? Because like I'm a newbie in this world, so nobody knows me. So I need to pair up with something big like Amazon. So is it a good strategy to approach them and show them my stuff and then let them decide whether they want to publish for me or whatever?
Well, they have, what you would want to do is go through KDP, Kindle Publishing, Kindle Publishing Platform. And it is a Kindle company. It's owned by Amazon, or rather it's owned by Amazon. KDP is owned by Amazon. And they have all kinds of tutorials. And if you go to YouTube and you basically write in your question, you know, you can find all kinds of YouTube videos that will instruct you on how to do things, you know, even if you're not technically inclined. And there's all kinds of services that if you're not technically inclined, then you can pay someone. Like I do layout and design. That's what I, you know, did whenever I was with the federal government. I did that, and I did editing. I like layout, you know, but you can find these little services that they will do the things for you, and they will, you know, all these tutorials, and you do it yourself. And, you know, now, my big advice is, you know, and even though I've done all these books and I've done editing, you always get your stuff professionally edited. I say you're your own worst editor. Just because you don't see your own mistakes. You may know it, but you don't see what's actually there on the page. So that's why I always, you know, always have an editor go through my work for me. But otherwise, you know, you can be able to, you know, that's how you can be able to, you know, get these services, pay for services, get somebody who can help you out. You know, if you're not going to be good at, you know, if you're not good with Photoshop, you know, get a cover designer, or like I did, if you search around, you can maybe find a cover. What's also, YouTube is invaluable as far as finding instructions and what to look for as far as cover design. What makes a good cover? You know, it can kill your book if you have a lousy cover. I've seen that with some book tours or reviews where they say the cover does not represent the book at all, or the cover is a disservice to the book, you know, that type of thing. So you want to, you know, so look for that on YouTube as to what makes a good cover, what to look for in a good cover.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Lauren. Can you tell listeners and viewers your website and how they can get in touch with you?
My website is www.mysterylady.net. You know, that's where you can find my books. You can find links to buy my books. You can find, you know, and some of them you can find the excerpts for books. You know, my books are available. They are available in print and ebook and audiobook. Even Killer Deadline is going to be coming out in audiobook. And for iReads, go to ireadbooktours.com. That's where you can find that.
Fabulous. Well, it has just been such a pleasure to have you on the show and to hear all of this. It's just like a real eye opener about publishing and writing books. So I just want to remind our listeners that this will be posted on our YouTube channel at 45 Women Disrupting Influencers. And we'd love you to subscribe to our magazine at 45.com and join our Facebook group, Fab 45 Women's Revolution. So thanks again.